I want to say that being a doctoral student in terms of trying to present is never an easy task. But we always find that our students gain something wonderful. So on this particular one, I'm not going to ask you what you hope to get out of it. I'm going to say that what I hope you ask is that you ask our students things like, give me your problem statements in layman's languages, or ask them questions that will help them towards their research, their methodology. Remember that this is a problem probing way of doing things, and we want people to ask the students questions. So, Moyahabo, I think that you might be feeling a bit nervous after that, but I know that there are people here, as Sushi had mentioned before, she's specifically coming because she's interested in the role of National Metrology Institutes in supporting development in the Southern African development community. I think this is an imperative topic, and I certainly think you've got an extremely interesting background with your with your undergraduate studies being in chemistry and analytical chemistry. You hold a master's from Vinci and are now engaged in your doctorate. Your experience in laboratory operations and management, project management and quality management in the pharmaceutical industry, where you started at SABS as well, I think has really just made your understanding around these imperatives in the business environment so critical. So I know that you're currently a senior manager of the Africa Reference Institute, and that you very much focused on the management of training courses, reference measurements, etc. So we are holding you to that in terms of your methodology section, but mostly we thank you for your contribution as a Da Vinci student and alumnus, both to the influencing of humane sustainable societies, as well as your contribution of your research. I now introduce to you Moyahabo Penny Manganyi.
Thank you very much. This was a bit daunting, but I'm happy to share the topic that I'm looking at, the metrology, the role of National Metrology Institute in supporting development in the SADC, the Southern African Development Community. I know most of people metrology, sometimes they think it's meteorology, but metrology, just to give an explanation, it's the science of measurement. And looking at metrology, it has been one of the most fundamental things since the beginning of time. And I'll give a full definition of metrology according to the International Bureau of Weights and Measures, the BIPM. Quote, the science, metrology is the science of measurement, embracing both experimental and theoretical determinations at any level of uncertainty in any field of science and technology, close quote. So just to say that metrology covers all areas of our lives. And if you look at the history of metrology, you can go back to the ancient times. In Egypt, the pyramids. If you look at the construction of pyramids, measurements were very important to construct the pyramids accurately. If you look at the Wright brothers, when they did the aeroplane, measurements played a very big role in doing that. So accurate and reliable measurements are important to our activities. And there is a great need of accurate and reliable measurements in every area of our lives, in trade, in whatever that we do as a country. And so the National Metrology Institute is consequently an essential measurement partner for government, for industry, and the wider the wider community society. This calls for a National Metrology Institutes that are adequately equipped to provide measurement solutions for sustainable development. So it is very important that we look at their role in terms of our community, the SADC community, and especially if you look at the Africa trade agreement, what we are looking at, metrology plays a very important role in the goods that we are trading. And why did I embark on this study? If we look at the research gap that we have currently, and I've looked at the literature and looked at whatever there is little research on the importance or the work of metrology in supporting different regions or countries, and especially at SADC. I couldn't find any study that looked at that. And the aim of the study is to bridge that gap so that we can see the importance of these institutions within the SADC community, within our development, and looking at the development goals of the whole region and our countries, individual countries. And the problem statement is that this study intends to address the alignment and contribution of the NMIs, that's your National Metrology Institutes, in SADC countries on the development goals. Because what we see is that the projects that these institutions are engaging in, what are they contributing to within their society, within the communities? And the aim is to assess the interrelations of the NMI and the development goals of their countries. If we look at SADC, individual countries, what are their development goals? If we look at SADC collectively, what are our development goals as a region? And just to describe my ontology, as described in the introduction, I'm working within this industry. I'm working within looking after the reference lab, the training, and the other areas within this. And I've been involved in the project management of all the projects within the NMI within South Africa. And now the issue is that the projects that we're embarking on, are we only looking at research? What contributions are we making within the society? What contribution are we making within the SADC region? So for me, I'm looking within the viewpoint of constructionism. If you look at what Grandy says about constructionism as a viewpoint, it's a viewpoint in which people constantly construct and negotiate meanings to make sense of their experiences. And the viewpoint focuses on collective generation of meaning, and it embraces the critical spirit. So looking at that, I will be looking at this study in that viewpoint. And my epistemology is a constructive a viewpoint where I will be the participants that will be taking part. Most of them would have experienced the work that they did at NMI, or they would have worked with the NMI either from the industry side, or the participants will be from within the NMIs. And the main question, as I said, it's what is the interrelation between the NMI and the development goals of their countries and in SADC. So that's the main questions that I have there. And in that question, if you look at the sub questions that I'm looking at, it's the relationship between the NMI and the key stakeholders. the key stakeholders are those that are influencing or are being influenced by the services, the work of the NMI. And also, I'll be looking at the influence that the NMI has, the organizational environment. How is the organizational environment of the NMIs that will be involved in this study, and the environment in terms of how do they foster innovation and development of the local industries? Are they involved in the innovation projects? What is happening? How is that fostered? That's the second question that I'm looking at. And the other thing is the programs or the projects, because I know most of NMIs are involved in projects, in certain programs, or projects. How do they support and contribute to the innovation and development of their local industry? As I said, that if you look at issues like uncertainty, they are very important. If we embark on improving an uncertainty of a certain measurement, how does it contribute to the innovation and development of our local industry? And also, what contribution did the projects that the NMIs embarked on for the past 5 years had on the development goals of the country? So we'll be looking at that, of saying whatever projects that they were involved in the past 5 years, how did they contribute? And if you look at the framework that we are looking at in terms of, because if you look at the strategy of most of the countries in the SADC, we are looking at your sustainable development. How are we achieving the sustainable development as a region and as individual countries? And within the strategic documents, for example, in South Africa, the NDP, they are looking at 2030, what do we want to achieve in that? So it is very important that we look at whatever projects that the NMIs are involved in. The study will be a qualitative study where I will be looking at this, the approach that I will be using will be based on Husserlian phenomenological approach. And that is where I will be doing interviews. The interviews will be the primary data, but also I'll be looking at the strategic documents of the NMIs, the SADC, and the country. Looking at the data that is placed there, at the goals and the information. So the documents will serve as the secondary data, and the primary data will be the interviews that I will conduct with the key stakeholders. And the population, as I said, will be the metrologists. Those are the people who do measurements. There will be the senior managers. There will be the executives within the NMIs. And also, I will look at the locally within South Africa, I will look at the customers of the NMIs. I will also do interviews with the customers that were serviced in the past 3 years. And the sample size, I'm looking at interviewing at least 15 to 25 participants. That will be the sample size that I'm looking at. And I have used the purposive sampling method. That's where purposely, as I said, that I will identify people within the organization and again, the snowballing will help a lot, because in some of the NMIs within the SADC region, I will rely on the colleagues who will know the people better from that side, that will help me they will direct me on who to speak to. And the data analysis that I'm looking at, the interviews will be transcribed, and using concepts that are present in the data, we will be coding those concepts within the data, within the what we are getting. And again, just to highlight that the interviews that I'm going to conduct will be semi-structured interviews, where there are set of questions that will be able to direct me in more questions to do, more questions to ask to the participants. And out of that, as I said, we'll be transcribing the interviews, and also getting some information from the secondary data, where I'll be able to code and come up with topics that will help us to describe and explain what we have found. And also, out of this study, what we are hoping to have, it's also come up with a tool to be able to allow the NMIs to be able to assess their contributions periodically. Because if you look, I was looking at how do we assess this, and I found that there is no tool that the NMIs are using to assess development, to assess the projects, how their project contributed to the development of the countries. Currently, I have done chapter 1 to chapter 3. I'm busy with chapter 4, where I've also started with the interviews and gathering the data from the interviews, and also the documents, because some of the documents from other SADC countries, it has been difficult to get them. So I had to find people who had to send me the documents. So I'm gathering that data, and also getting key people, their contact details. I'm still sending out requests for participants to participate. So that is where I am in my research. Thank you.
I just wanted to understand, Penny, in terms of your contribution. So at doctoral level, we obviously want to say you have to contribute new knowledge. So if I were to ask you just in literally a sentence, what is your contribution to new knowledge from this study that you believe?
I think my contribution will be helping out the NMIs, or in that industry, to be able to come up with a tool to be able to assess what their contribution is, and be able to on how to do it, and also to look at whatever that is done, that they look at it with an eye of assisting the country, their countries, or the region in achieving the developments in
so
what
will
they are
this
doing.
tool be something new that's never been done before?
Yes.
Okay. I'll leave my second question because I see both Prof. Klopper and Prof. Singh also want to ask you a question. So I will leave it to them first and then ask you if I've got time for a follow-up question. Prof. Klopper and then Prof. Singh.
Thank you, Dr. Kuhn, and thank you, Penny. I really enjoyed your presentation. I think it's fascinating. So my question is twofold. In a true Da Vinci style, what do you think is your biggest challenge? And I want you to probe that, and by doing that, almost say how you will overcome that. Because in this journey that you describe, I think it's not going to be a flat surface. There will be bumps and hiccups. So What will it be and how will you deal with that? And then it should not be a problem.
I think currently what I've realized is that the biggest challenge is to get participants that are willing to participate, because this is a small community, and in trying to address that, it's trying to work within the structures of the community. Well, as I said, that getting the key people who are known within community and trusted to be able to help in talking with the participants, showing what the contribution that this study will do within the community, and also getting the data. As I said, that it has not been easy to get your annual reports, because I'll be looking at the annual reports of the institutions to get their strategic documents. So you have that hurdle that even though it's supposed to be within the space that we know, that it's supposed to be public, where something you can get publicly. But I find that instead of getting, for example, a recent annual report that is 2 years old, I'm getting the one that is 6 years old. I can't get the recent ones. So in doing that, it's trying to work with the team that is there. If I can say that within the SADC region, they've got a regional body where I can talk within the regional, the SADC Met, which is the SADC metrology body, trying to speak to key people to help out, speak with their with our colleagues, and showing the importance of the study.
Thank you, Penny. And I think just one remark or comment, and we can take the discussion offline. But what you described to me, I'm glad you've identified that, because you might consider the use of a moderator or listening post, just an objective eye or person that know the cultural nuances to create that, instill that feeling of trust. And, so when you engage with that guy, because I hear you clearly saying that, so there's definitely something to consider, and read up on that, and happy to engage on that. But I think I appreciate that. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Prof. Klopper. Prof. Singh, and then Mark, your question.
Thank you, Marla. Penny, thank you very much for your presentation. Very interesting. I just want you to confirm, what is the design for your study? And what I'm not understanding is why the struggle to get hold of the people who have the data, because you're an agency of government and you have international relations, and your department, the Department of Science and Technology, has somebody who's responsible not for metrology, but for international relations. So I think you need to not just go through your agency, but rather through international relations, where there can be a formal request for them to assist you. And I think also then you would be able to access the latest reports or secondary data that you are chasing after. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The design of my study is a qualitative study, as I said, and I'll be collecting qualitative data, and it's descriptive. It's a descriptive study, a descriptive qualitative study. But thank you for the advice.
Mark has asked, what is your biggest insight from your research so far?
Capabilities in order to bring solutions to their local industry. Because if you look at the countries, the major industries that the countries are looking at developing, the question is that, do we have capabilities and skills to be able to really bring solution. That's the insight so far.
Dr. Thomas?
Hi there. Thank you for the very interesting presentation. I didn't know such a thing existed until you came along this afternoon. So I think the SADC region is very large. Have you not rather thought of, and of course, how will you measure sustainability when they all deal in quite diverse currencies and things like that? Would you not rather think of just using the CMA, the Common Monetary Area, which is South Africa plus 3 other countries? It may make it an easier study. Still very interesting, but would make it easier.
Actually, I was looking, what I did in my studies, I took a sample of 5 countries around South Africa and looking at them. But remember, as a SADC region, the SADC region also has a strategic document where they are looking at the region as a whole, how they are going to ensure that there's development within the region. So looking at that, even though looking at the countries, as you said, common areas, but also as a region, we have our own strategic goals as a region. So there's also documents. As I said, there was a SADC 2030, SADC. It's a strategic document. So I just forgot the exact name. It's a strategic document where they are looking at development within all the SADC countries. So that's why I was interested in looking at SADC as a whole. But initially, I sampled 5 countries, and it's still a challenge. That's why I was looking at maybe looking at further countries. As I said, that within those 5 countries, I only managed to get response, and started with the interviews with 3 countries.
Yeah, I think the scope is very broad. You might have to bring that down. It might not be doable, especially since some of the countries haven't progressed at all. I mean, some have really been quite stagnant in the SADC region for some time. I think some of the I'm not quite sure if 2 of the CMA countries, the Common Monetary Area, are actually in SADC, whether they've signed the agreement. They may have, Eswatini and Lesotho, but Namibia certainly is in SADC. So if you could, in a PhD, you can funnel down, and that might make it easier. I'm just saying this is a huge scope, and we know that Namibia is working well. We know Eswatini is trying to get to grips with it. We know Lesotho is trying to develop. So if they're in the SADC agreement, I'm not quite sure of the 13, I think it's 13 countries that are in SADC, I'm not sure.
Yes.
You need to, perhaps that will bring it down a bit, so you funnel it down in your PhD.
Okay. Thank you.
I think, Dr. Thomas, that's, consider that as well from Dr. Thomas's comments, as well as the other comments. I see Prof. Klop has also done a hands up around Dr. Thomas's comments, and it is in order to assist you. So I just wanted to ask, because something, you spoke about your ontology as social constructionism, and you said your epistemology, I couldn't hear, did you say it was the same?
No, I said constructivism.
Okay.
They are 2 different, yes.
So I just want to understand that in terms of your study, why would you say that the epistemology is constructivism and not something like interpretivism, or if you're trying to change the status quo, then maybe critical realism? I'm just trying to understand why. I totally understand why your ontology is social constructionism, but I don't really know why constructivism would be an epistemology.
Actually, a viewpoint where the knowledge is constructed by individuals. And in this study, if you look at the participants, will be getting knowledge from participants in their what they have, the activities that they engaged in, and their work within the NMIs or with the NMIs. So their perception and deeper understanding into what is being studied here, it's very important. So that's why I'm thinking, I'm looking at that with that lens.
I don't know if Dr. Good is still on. I think she had to go join a class. Because I know in education they do use it as an epistemology. I'm just not convinced around that. So, Prof. Klopper, maybe we could engage a little bit further on constructivism. It won't change your study in terms of looking at ways of shifting, but I do see someone else has got a comment. Franzel, Dr. De Plooy-Cilliers.
Mollis, I think what Penny is saying, it's not wrong, because I mean, if you say that your ontological position is that reality is a social construction,
yes,
then from an epistemological point of view, you can then also say that knowledge is a social construction. And I think that is what Penny is saying.
Yeah, that's why I asked her that question in the beginning, but she said it's constructivism.
Well, as you know, there's quite a bit of controversy around what is vism and what is nism.
Mm-hmm.
And also because the paradigm, but I would actually, Penny, in your case, I would probably say that the paradigm will then be constructivism, because that's one of the paradigms that is used in education. Although
that's why I asked if Heather was on.
So it's more commonly referred to as interpretivism, but constructivism it's also referred to as constructivism, especially in education. But maybe talk about constructivism then as your overall paradigm. So that would be the overall umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
So when you then talk about knowledge construction, then you can say that, you know, from a constructivist point of view, knowledge will then also be seen as a social construction. But I think the emphasis should be on the subjectivity of knowledge. So knowledge is not necessarily in that typical paradigm that knowledge construction will be seen as something that is subjective and not necessarily objective. Also describing people's experiences and that in-depth understanding, as opposed to trying to find causalities or laws, etc. Thanks, Mola. I just wanted to comment on that.
So Dr. De Plooy-Cilliers is a methodological guru. That's why I asked, because Dr. Good is in education, and I'm well aware that the education practitioners use constructivism instead of interpretivist paradigm. But I see, Prof. Singh, you've got a last comment you want to make?
Thank you, Mara. So, Penny, your design, the way I see it, is an exploratory study, because you've given us a picture that in the SADC, there's no such research that has gone on previously. You're not finding literature. So you're on a journey exploring. And therefore, in relation to your response on constructivism, I have no problem with that. Now, your aim, as you say, is to look at developing a tool which will help the region or the countries in the region to evaluate their progress as far as sustainable development goes. So I'm beginning to understand that your key constructs for this study is development and sustainability. Now, what is not coming out from you, because in a subjective approach like this, your job entails objectivity, because metrology is about compliance to the ISO standards. So those are fixed standards. There's no opinions about those standards. The issue becomes how in the region do the different countries or the participating countries in your study, how do they see the issue of them either achieving their goals towards sustainable development or not? So I thought I'll just bring that out, because it's on the one hand, the nature of your business, of your institute, is very objectively determined. So I think that has to come out, that while you have the ISO standards, you are looking at the the responses as to perhaps where the challenges are and where the good practices are regarding sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Singh. Penny, thank you for giving of your time, and you certainly have stood your ground, which I think is wonderful, because I think it's important to take people's feedback, but to also feel that you are able to actually argue your points, etc., which is an important aspect. So I'm now going to ask Letta to give us her illustration of the discussion on your doctorate. And Connie, it is our gift to you for giving of your time, that you will always have this as a visual reminder of this day. So thank you for your contribution. And as I said, standing your ground really well, and looking forward to engaging and how you integrate some of the feedback. Thanks, Letta.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Coonan. So we spoke about the fact that metrology is the science of measurements. It's been with us for thousands of years. From ancient times, measurements have really been critical for our success. Penny has found that there's very little research on how to bridge the gap in the SADC countries in terms of the information available to her. And the aim of this study is to assist the NMI to help achieve those developmental goals for the SADC regions. She's talking about constructivism. There should be value to the community. She's looking into the key stakeholders. And I think a main outcome here is, how do we contribute to local industry? How do we contribute to sustainable development? Her study is qualitative. She's going to do interviews, 15 to 25 people, metrologists, senior management, executives, and customers as a sample, and then strategic documents as a secondary source. The results will show the insights of these semi-structured interviews and really create a tool for development. And that's the new knowledge that she's creating. Willing participants is sometimes a challenge, as well as getting the data is sometimes difficult, especially up-to-date recent information. The main insight from her study so far is issues of capability in organizations in the region to bring solutions to the industry. Prof. Klopper spoke about the role of maybe a moderator, and we highlighted the issue that 13 countries as a scope might be too large. And that, in a nutshell, is the visual summary for Curiosita this afternoon. Dr. Coonan, back over to you.
Thank you so much, Letta. Penny, I do see you have a smile on your face, even though it's slightly frozen. So I assume it's from your connectivity that it has been like that. But Letta, she was certainly smiling throughout. So thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. But I hope you have a wonderful evening. And we look forward to welcoming you at the end of July for our next session. And take care and have a good evening. Thank you.